And welcome back, college hockey fans. It's another episode of MNCAA. It is the NCHC crew, Max Veech, along with myself, Nick Maxson. Max, we're not in Colorado, but the avalanche is falling for one of the NCHC teams. It has been quite the turnaround since really December. And honestly, you could point back to December to where both of our teams have had intersecting paths. Really, one team that's been on a free fall, the other that's been trending upwards. Granted, it's not, shall I say, if you look at the standings, maybe the win-loss record, maybe the stone isn't as shiny as it appears in that limelight, but there are things that are starting to come together for the Bulldogs. And meanwhile, for my Huskies, we have a lot to discuss because it's not looking great as of late. So with that being said, let's get right into it, Max, because we've got some hockey to talk about from last weekend. My goodness. Hey, a split because that's what UMD does. But different kinds of games, right? They were both 1-goal games, a win Friday, a loss Saturday. But both of these games having a different character to themselves, but ultimately, again, 3 out of 6 points.
Yeah, it's kind of a great feeling, which is odd to say after a split. Normally, you're pretty melancholy, but when it's against the previously 5th or 5th ranked team in the nation, and reigning national championship winner and just perennial all-star team, you feel pretty good about it. It's not something that you're going to feel upset about by any means, especially with the steps that UMD started taking this year and has grown into taking more recently. Pretty pleased with what we've seen. But just to touch on what you were talking about earlier, I've been, relishing in the fact that St. Cloud has been struggling a little bit just as like an interconference rival. I don't want to see him. I don't want to kick a dog when it's down and whatever. But the more I think about the more that I think about it, I'm looking at the overall records now, and I'm like, they've been in a free fall for the entirety of 2025, and they still have one more win than UMD does. So I can't say too much about it. Not yet anyway. We'll see where it goes this upcoming weekend here and where we can take off next week. But yeah, to say that they've had intersecting paths or two ships crossing the night, whatever phrase you want to use, they have been on different trajectories basically for the last 3 weeks here for sure, and even maybe a little bit further back into last calendar year prior to that. But bringing it back to just this past weekend, more recent events anyway. Friday, 4-3 win. Felt good for UMD and every one of their fans for, I would say, 40 minutes of the game, maybe even 55 minutes of the game. The last little bit was want to pull your hair out. You're waiting for the shoe to drop, or I don't know what other colloquial terms we could use or phrases to say something bad to happen at the very end, because UMD came out, scored first, which is great. They love playing with the lead. I think, UMD and St. Cloud are both built very similarly, coached very similarly, where if you can get that lead and start playing with it, that's where they want to be. They're not built to chase. They're not built to outscore people, at least not yet anyway. So getting that was huge for the guys. Ended up tying it 1-1. Denver did. And then UMD went out to a 4-1 lead before Denver started battling back there. And it was built off of the power play to start the game there. Pionk with a wrister from the point. Max Plante with another power play goal. His point streak continues, and he's got, I think, the 10th most points per game in the nation. Obviously, he missed quite a few games due to being in World Juniors and injury and other factors going in there. But if you break it down on a per game basis, he's among the nation's best in terms of production out there, which has been awesome to see, especially as a freshman. Bettens and Menghini being the other two guys that were getting on the scoreboard there, which was great to see. But then to give up a 4-1 lead and just see Denver, a team like Denver specifically, but Denver in general, kind of chip away at it and bring it to 4-3, I think with, at the 16th minute or around there anyway. Plenty of time left at the end of the game to have a few extra opportunities, and extra opportunities they had. I think they pulled the goaltender with just over 3 minutes left, and Credit to UMD. They played great defense. They kept the puck out of the zone for the most part. They didn't give up any grade A chances, didn't make Klayton Knapp work super hard at it. And they gutted it out, which is, a credit to what they've or how far they've come. I would say, maybe earlier this season, they didn't have the knowledge or willpower or willingness to block shots or do what it takes to get a win like that. And they certainly did on Friday, and it was great to see. The one thing I will say, well, I guess there's two that I want to kind of highlight here. Klayton Knapp, when you take 45 shots against the 5th best team in the nation with the nation's best power play operating at over 30%, you probably don't expect great things to happen. And he, gave up 3 goals. No goalie likes to see, more than 1 or 2 on there. They obviously want 0, but like you expect to give up 1 or 2 to a team like that. I would say that that's something that a game that you can hang your hat on where you gave up 3 is kind of rare, but this is certainly one of them that I would put in his arsenal or, his resume that he's building and wants to show off to people. The one save that, I can attribute to somebody else, Klayton Knapp made the initial save on it, but Owen Gallatin, there's a puck trickling through, like I was saying, just in that last little flurry when Denver's got extra attacker and trying to get anything to go in. Gallatin dives and bats it off of the goal line there. I think they took a second look at it and just making sure that it didn't cross, but gets it out of the zone. And that was the difference was somebody that was willing to just, go all out, dive and be out of position from, that point forward, risking it to get the puck out. And it was very cool to see. I was very happy for the guys to get that win on Friday and kind of set the tone for the weekend, maybe give them a little bit more confidence going into a Saturday game. It's always tough when you're playing, against somebody who, at least on paper, outranks you in quite a few categories and has a better season resume, and everybody kind of expects to win. Hard to battle back in a second game if you don't win that first one, but that momentum on Friday really showed on Saturday as well. Not necessarily the result that they wanted, 2-1 loss, but I would say it's very similar in terms of my accolades that I would give to the team in terms of what they were able to produce on ice. Shots, I think they ended up even at 30-30. UMD almost doubled up their blocks, which again is to a credit to what Sandelin's been able to instill in not only the defensive players, but the guys that are at the top and eating those near the blue line. And then, they're kind of getting killed in faceoffs. It's waning from where it started to at the beginning of the season to where we are now, but I'm fine losing some of those faceoff battles if we're going to win the grittier areas there. But the only lone goal for UMD in this game, again, Gallatin, maybe not a career weekend, but certainly a memorable one for him. 75th point of his career at UMD. Not probably going to make the century mark at UMD, but you never want to count a guy out when he's on a heater like this. Maybe he can rifle off quite a few, but it would be one heck of a run, we'll say, if he's able to do that. But biggest gripes I have, I guess, with UMD's play on Saturday's game is giving up a late goal in period 1, kind of a UMD calling card over the last 4 or 5 years here, where time's winding down and they let one go in late. So coming into period 2, kind of feeling lackluster after that, and you give one up in the first 5 minutes again. It was, I think, just 3 minutes in or so. Denver goes up 2-0, but again, something you didn't see at the beginning of the year that you were now, or you are seeing a lot more now, is UMD's willingness to kind of put your head down and battle back a heck of a lot more and get that Gallatin goal. So I would say overall on the weekend, I was very, very pleased with what I saw. And if this is the UMD team that we're going to see moving forward, I'm very excited to see what they can produce. And you don't want to split every weekend, but against a team like Denver, I'll take it every time.
100%. And this is something we've talked about it over the course of the last couple of weeks here, Max, is that it does feel again that things are starting to gel. Klayton Knapp did get some honors this week too from the NCHC as I believe rookie of the week. But I want to stick on Knapp a little bit here, Max, because it really was the Adam Gayon show coming into this year. He was the high profile name, again, an NHL draft pick. Klayton Knapp coming out of the Bobcats and the Null. Not sure there was a ton of expectation from him in terms of how much he would be used, but Gan goes down. He's injured. It's apparently longer term. So Knapp having to come in. What have you been most impressed with Klayton Knapp in terms of what he's been able to do to sort of being the backstop and more so being a reliable goaltender to get them through this sort of freshman heavy season, and the game around the Bulldogs seems to have really gelled around his presence being in the back of the net.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about having Klayton back there, but the guys in front of him have been, helping him out quite a bit. I don't want to say that's the sole reason that he's succeeding, because he just had a 70 save weekend where he had a 933 save percentage. So there's all credit to him in general. But the team seems to be playing a heck of a lot better, just knowing that they've got somebody reliable back there. And not that Guyon wasn't either. I think he was the star for many of the games, even the ones that they lost. But Knapp has just given a second wind of energy into this team, and seems like a great locker room guy to have. And that might be part of it as well, where it's a kid that kind of bet on himself, knew that he was going to be probably coming in as a second string or somebody who was going to have to battle for time. And he's done that and proven that he's more than capable of being a serviceable goalie in the NCHC at the D1 level in general, whatever you want to call it or however you want to categorize it. I've got nothing but good things to say about him and what he's been able to do. And you had mentioned it, not a guy that was highly sought after, both in that null range or coming into the D1 area. A couple of teams given a phone call, but taking the chance on UMD given the situation regardless, and wanting to come there. And he's made his mark for sure. And I'm happy to have him here. I would say, it's hard to say that flexibility is the thing that you're most impressed with, but every weekend it's one of these saves where he's just throwing a toe out there and barely catching something with the skate blade, or reaching behind him and getting a blocker on something, or one way or another, he's making these saves. And when you say he's not on the ice as much as maybe like a Hasek was, and it's a different style of goaltending completely. Nobody's ever going to be Dominic Hasek, but the way that Hasek used to make the saves that you would expect nobody to make, I'm seeing some of those situations that Knapp is making. Again, different movements, whatever. They're not the same goalie. I cannot emphasize that enough. But they're finding similar results in stopping pucks that many others would have either let through or found a way to sneak through. So I would say that I'm glad to see him in the UMD's version of maroon and gold on the ice, and happy to have him here.
Definitely got to see him in his Bismarck Bobcat days, especially a lot last season. When I was calling games for the Norsemen. When his commitment was announced, I wasn't surprised. He was actually splitting time with Stephen Peck, was now with Michigan. So, I mean, the Bobcats last year, and even this year, were a pretty dangerous hockey club. So to me, I can see it, but again, you just never know. Especially when you're behind a draft pick like Adam Gayon, what sort of what the expectation was going to be going into the year in terms of playing time. But you're still happy if you're Klayton Knapp to be within that organization who's always been a goaltender friendly system. But that's the thing, right? Is you never know when your name's called up, because that transition us pretty well to what my team's experiencing. The results have not been the same. And here's the thing. Right. It's not on the goaltending. I said it last week. I had a pretty, shall I say, almost one of those Sunday sermon speeches, again, with Greg Coleman, trying to pump up my team. And it's been a mixture, my goodness, of this team. And Max, I'll give you some time here, just sort of, set the table here for me. But because the outlook for this team, when you got to Omaha back in the early parts of December to now at the end of January, are a little bit different. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. The one thing that I would say that St. Cloud State fans historically have been able to rely on is very similar, again, to UMD. If you score 3 goals, you're more than likely going to win the game. That has not been the case as of late, and I don't know if that's fully going to play into what you're talking about here, but of their last 9, they have 1 win. So they're, 1-8 in those last 9. And 4 of those 8 losses, they've scored those 3 goals in, and they just have not been able to keep up. And, I think 1, maybe even 2 of them were overtime losses, and that plays into that stat a little bit more than some of the other ones do. But they just have not been able to find ways to win there. And, without a win in 2025, we're going to be coming up to the end of the weekend here. Do they have a chance? What date do we have for our games this weekend? They'll have a chance on Friday. They'll have a chance on Friday to get a win in January, to avoid that horrible stat of gone a calendar month without a win. That's never a good spot to be in. I had to do it twice last year, so I get it. But yeah, it's been a tough road for sure. And the one, saving grace that I will say before I kick it over to you here is that St. Cloud State, I would have to check because Hockey East is probably going to have it just given how many teams they have ranked. I would say St. Cloud State's schedule has got to be in the top 10 most difficult in the country, because I just went back and looked at it, and all of the teams that are on there right now are, either UMD, Bemidji. There's a couple in there with St. Thomas, and those are smaller ones here and there, but everything else seems to be a ranked team, and a lot of those teams were ranked in the top 10 at the time that they faced them, and it doesn't get any easier either moving forward. No. So what's been going on lately, and what has to change for them to kind of right the ship?
So a couple of things. I think we have to take a macro view of what's happened, right? Now, for those who want to jump down my proverbial throat and say Isaac Posh, and that it's not that he has nothing to do with the Husky struggles, right? There's a part of it, but I will never go on the bandwagon to say that he is the only reason. His absence is the only thing that's contributing to the Huskies' lack of success over the last few weeks. I will never buy into, because here's why. We talked about this before we recorded, Max, and I don't know if I can more eloquently repeat what I said earlier, because that's just how I do it, is I talk much better before I hit the record button. But every weekend has been a different recipe for why the results have been the way that they are, right? So to give you a great example, Arizona State, St. Cloud on Friday has a 3-1 win. They allowed 2 quick goals in a minute 34, if I remember correctly. And the mental toughness, right? If there's been one thing that we pointed to in teams of past, and I can go back to 2021, even to like 2019, right? Where no matter what happened, historically under Brett Larson, the team has been, okay, no big deal. It's all good. Let's reset. Not a problem, right? I didn't get that sense that Friday game, because all of a sudden then a bad pinch, they come down, and not far, much later, it's 4-3 Arizona State. And they looked out of the game mentally.
Yeah.
So that's one of it, right? Number 2, Saturday, it's 1-1. It's a great tight checking game against the Sun Devils. 5-minute major boarding call in the third. What was at that point a plus 90% penalty kill gets scored on 3 times.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, Arizona State's power play was also plus 23% on the season. They're good, right?
Yep.
And we've talked about it so many times, right? It's special teams. They'll become so much more important, but let's review, right? So a mental collapse followed by one bad penalty, and then your PK just can't shut the door, which, mind you, is that asking a lot? Probably in that situation, right? Sure. You still would love them to do the job. And I think if you're the coaching staff, you would probably come out and say, we got to take care of business. Rightfully so, right? Yep. That's a darn good power play also on the other side, right? So there's that. North Dakota is always a tough place to play, going back a couple of weeks in Grand Forks. And then you go on the road to Omaha more recently. Again, just can't buy a bounce.
Right.
Missed an open net. Had a couple of great saves. Simon Latkozy, goaltender of the week.
Yep.
Sense of theme here, right? So we talked last week about the lack of offense, right? But then you go, well, wait a second. They got the goals this weekend. They did. Problem is they're now not getting the saves. So here's my hockey conclusion, right? And that is echoing a lot of the sentiments that are out there. I know Dave Starman came out, spoke a couple words on Twitter/X about how he's not perplexed, but this team can turn it around.
Yeah.
And this is not me being just the radio voice of St. Cloud State. I've been on record multiple times on this podcast and also previous podcasts, RIP Huskies Warming House podcast, but that's okay. Had a great conversation with Noah Grant just today. Also, by the way, for those doing well, has actually been out of the booth now for about 8 months, and he's actually enjoying it. He's enjoying the time off, which definitely miss talking hockey with him. I'll say that much. But with that being said, we kind of talked about it a bit, and at the end of the day, I don't disagree with Dave Starman. I don't. There's a lot of the metrics, a lot of the eye tests are saying some of it's a little bit of puck luck. Some of it's situational. Again, we talked about the open net Friday or Saturday again, Arizona State, they claw back. After that, they make it to 4-3. And if you can just elevate a puck another 6 to 7 inches, this game is tied. Does that mean they win that game? Who knows?
Right.
But it pushes it to overtime. And you just kind of wonder what the mental toll would have been much different had they lost an OT, fought their way back. I'll even say this. If they fight back down 4-1 and win that game in overtime, how much different this weekend may have looked.
Right.
Again, right, it's not one thing. I think it's a different scenario every week, which is also a little bit more frustrating, and also why a lot of the hockey pundits, myself included, have come out and said they're playing the game the right way. They just haven't been able to catch a balance on a couple of nights. There's been a falter, some inconsistencies, I think is the exact word Dave Starman used. He's totally right about that. I would argue the biggest inconsistency is scoring from your upperclassmen. That has been the biggest disappointment so far this year. I would also, from my standpoint, also argue that there's not been enough offense from the blue line perspective. I know they would love more from that without sacrificing stuff coming back your way.
Yeah.
So it's tough, right? It's because it's like you feel like you playing well enough to win, and I would argue in most cases they have. And for different combinations of factors on any given night, they just have found themselves on the wrong side of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
But now we get to this weekend, Max.
Yeah.
And here's where I think, and maybe this is a hot take, and I want to get your opinion on this. North Dakota coming in after what was an emotional series in Grand Forks 6 weeks ago. And I still think that some of that water is still boiling from 6 weeks ago. I really feel that sentiment. If this weekend is going to define the rest of the Husky season, I really do believe that. And I'll get your take on this here in a second. Because at the end of the day, the Huskies have a choice. And the choice to me is, can they get up to be the bad guy within the disciplined way that they should play? But if any team's going to wake them up, it's this team. And I think now was the right time that they're going to play them. And if they're able to come out with at least one, I think they're in a better spot. If they come out with 0 wins this weekend, that's going to be tough. Am I right that this weekend with this opponent will define the season?
Yeah, I'd go a step further. I would say Friday defines their season, because if you come out sluggish against a team like this, given what happened in the first series and given where they're at currently, I don't know that there's a ton of hope moving forward, because they have to be antsy, not only for a win in general, but to prove a point and kind of stick it to North Dakota. Everybody likes kind of playing North Dakota, in D1 hockey, but specifically in the NCHC and interconference play. But this series is going to mean a little bit more to St. Cloud, like I said, given the storylines going in there. So, yeah, not only does this weekend kind of define it, but I would be so nervous on Saturday if Friday doesn't. They don't even necessarily have to win Friday, but they do have to play the right kind of hockey, like you said. chip on the shoulder. They do have to, play the body a little bit more, but within the confines where you're not giving up 5-minute majors to a team that's also hungry for wins. They're not as desperate as St. Cloud State. They're not as dire straits, but both of these teams are going to be in that fighting mentality. And I don't mean, fisticuffs and physically fighting, but fighting for positions, clawing, I don't know, desperate, whatever you want to refer to it as. And I don't think they want to play desperate. I think they have to play a structured and smart game in order to do it, but you have to do it with a different level of intensity. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right that this weekend in general is going to define St. Cloud's remainder of their season there. And some guys are probably going to mentally check out if they don't get a win. And I'm not going to condone that, but I'll say I understand it, given the fact that, you go, 4 full weekends. And I mean, your last 5 series, because that St. Thomas game wasn't even a complete series, without a win in general or sweeping. And, some of these aren't even going into the overtime loss, so not getting any points. It's kind of, it takes a different mental toll than it does in some other sports. Because it's not just a one-off game where you get to move on to the next person and lament it or whatever. You have to play them again the next night, and so you just kind of get beat down twice when it happens over and over and over again. So, absolutely, 100% agree that this weekend and hopefully Friday night is kind of going to define where they're at. And I would like to see a good game regardless. I don't necessarily hate having a little bit of extra, chippiness and guys going after one another. I don't want to see 16 penalties or something stupid again that we saw previously or in some other NCHC games this season. But I would like to see, some of these guys take it to the next level, or their next level anyway, and play their best hockey.
And I think, and it's a tough position, right? Because I think you mentioned the pressure, the antsiness, the desperation, right? You want to see the desperation be played out on the ice in a, what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? In a way that's productive. Maybe that's where I was going for. Because if you just hang on to the emotions, that's a recipe for outright disaster against North Dakota. Couple other tidbits I want to get to. Sean Davik, who reports for the USCHO as well as St. Cloud Live, had this. St. Cloud State has missed the 2011 and the 2012 NCAA tournaments. They have not missed consecutive tournaments since then. So it's been 12 years, mind you. And let's not forget, both of our squads were in Pittsburgh in a Frozen Four in 2021.
Yeah.
So it's not far removed, and also shows you how quickly college hockey, the landscape can change, right? And I know that Brett Larson, after last season, very much lamenting on the what the non-conference record did, just too little, too late in that regards. This year, it's been the conference record. Just for whatever reason, again, we talked about it earlier, just different circumstances, different things at different nights. But Max, this begs the question, and it's an unfair question in my opinion, but I know that it's been floated out there. How much of this is on the coaching staff?
It's hard to say because, they are dealing with something similar to UMD, where your most productive guys as of late are, the freshman class, and they're the one that are kind of towing the rest of the team along there. So is it really on the coaching staff to push the upperclassmen to kind of get back into the play? I don't know if that's necessarily the case, especially ones that have proven it in the past, because you're seeing the coaching staff bring the freshmen up into play and get acquainted with the rest of the league there. So I think it's more of a motivation issue with some of the guys on the team and getting back into, the Huskies hockey, or traditionally what they've done in the past. There's a little bit of, some mental things with maybe having a different goaltender back there that's not an Isaac Posh. And I don't want to, like you said, I don't blame, Gavin Enright or any of the other guys that are putting time in back there one bit. I think they are, more than serviceable as a D1 goalie, especially, to get a spot at St. Cloud, even if you're not intended to be the starter right away. Or if you're coming in as just a guy that should be filling a role like Enright is. But I would say that I wouldn't put all of it on the coaching staff by any means. They're just having a heck of a time having all of the pieces kind of work at once here. And it'll click eventually. You just hope it comes sooner rather than later.
I will add to this because I've never been on the coaching staff as the issue here, because one, he's made some tough decisions. When I say he, I probably should be fair and say the coaching staff. I mean, Adam Ingram, not to single out certain players, has been in and out of the lineup because of some of the lack of production he's had. Gavin Thorson, to me, has been up and down the lineup. I'm trying to find out what his spot is, right? Because he plays a very sandpaper type role, but also can be offensive at times, right? He can actually find and set up him. Bernovic is kind of hot and cold. When he's hot, he's ripping pucks in the net. When he's cold, he's offensively almost, shall we say, invisible out there. And I don't take that lightly, but he's also, again, he's a freshman, right? So it's like he's leading the team in goals. So to your point, the lack of upperclassmen contributions and the fact that they've had to rely on the freshmen to kind of carry the mail, I think has been part of the overall bigger picture of what has faulted this team. Thor Bufflin, who was in another lineup, was paired on the top unit with Cooper Wiley out with injury. That hasn't helped too. One of the better steady two-way defenders has been out with injury for St. Cloud State. I do think Thor Bufflin, though, is been playing a really solid game for them as far as, just being inserted and just being told, hey, do what you got to do. He's got great offensive instincts. I actually interviewed him a couple of weeks ago and asked him if he texted his cousin again, Dustin Bufflin, and said they're not like super close, but he's actually Josh Morrissey was the kid that he grew up watching, was like, that's the guy I model my game off of. And if anybody knows, Josh Morrissey's one hell of a hockey player, despite he plays for a team that I despise in the NHL. So yeah, it's weird, right? I mean, the Huskies are a weird team. I think, again, it's not one person. It's not one sort of lack in their game. It's a cluster. It's a different story every weekend. Right. But to your and I points, they have an opportunity this weekend. I kind of hope that with, in a weird way, that if there's some emotions that carry over, if at the very least it motivates them to bring their A game, to be a little bit more harder on the forecheck. Again, I want to see within, the rules. I don't want to see anything crazy because, unfortunately, special teams has not been in the way of the Huskies the last couple of weeks either. But it is make or break to a degree this weekend. And Max, it's some trying times there at the Herbrooks National Hockey Center. Not good. So with that being said, the overall impact, the NCHC picture, as we always do here, Max, the standings, just as everybody predicted, said no one ever. Here's where we stand. In first place, again, it is Western Michigan with 30 points. They're 10-1-1 in the NCHC, 17-4-1 overall. Again, I will still be on the same boat that this team does not get as much national attention as it really should. Right. I think you would be on the same page with that. I think that's a very dangerous hockey team. Alex Bump is playing on another level. Again, the Philadelphia Flyers draft pick. He's just been awesome. How about this? Omaha in second place after the sweep of St. Cloud at 29 points. They're 10-4 in conference play. Arizona State in third, just 2 points behind with 28. They're 9-5. And then the tie for fourth place, it's Denver and North Dakota, both at 20 points and 7-5 overall in conference play. Then we get to Bulldogs 19 with CC 19. That is for 6th and 7th place. It is St. Cloud at 4-10 in conference play at 14 points, in Miami down there with a single conference point. Again, it's been a struggle for Anthony Noreen's squad, which will probably see more brighter days ahead as it gets a very large recruiting class in next year. I'm actually very anxious to see how they turn it around, because there's some positive signs there with Miami. They've been competitive. Again, just haven't found the wins where they needed to them. Max, but now the pairwise. This is the big one. Again, mind you, was it 2? Yeah, I think just 2 weeks ago, St. Cloud was in the top 10 in the pairwise. Here's where we sit as far as NCHC teams. Western Michigan leads the NCHC pack. They're at 6 in the pairwise. Denver right behind them at 7. You have to slip down to 14, where Arizona State currently resides. Keep going south. It is North Dakota at 26, St. Cloud at 27. So they have slipped almost 20 spots in 2 weeks of play. No thanks to your Bulldogs. I'll just say it that way. Speaking of which, Colorado College at 32. It is Duluth at 36. Somehow still down there. I don't get that. I'm missing a couple.
Omaha's right above Duluth.
Thank you. Yes, Omaha's at 35, and then Miami, unfortunately, at 62. But Max, at the end of the day, I think for both of our squads, with where we're at with the calendar, with where we're at in the pairwise, really, there's one viable pathway is that you probably have to win the NCHC tournament. And again, we talked about, well, I should say, we'll recap future schedules here because Duluth does have the week off. And maybe before we do that, I want to get your comment on the week off because, like St. Cloud's current opponent, best time, is this the worst time for Duluth to have a bye?
It absolutely is. I hate it more than just about anything else right now. I don't want a team that's as hot as Duluth is to take time off and fall back into bad habits or anything like that. I think, despite Guyon not playing, I think he is cleared to play if he were to be needed medically anyway. It's weird to say that coming off of a loss on Saturdays, talking about how hot your team is, but I think they're playing the right hockey right now, and I want to capitalize on it while the guys have it in their minds and, muscle memory and what's going on. You don't want to get into just a practice week where you're kind of, skating through drills and doing a ton of, film study and whatever else going in there. I want them going at that 100% and remembering what that feels like. That being said, I totally understand it happens to everybody at least once in the second half, and everybody's going to do it. I'm just disappointed that it's happening now, unfortunately. So,
right.
Looking forward to their next opponent. Omaha obviously is unranked currently receiving votes, second in the NCHC ranking. So, should they pick up a win or two this weekend against Denver, I would expect them to climb even more, and that would be another ranked opponent, which would help UMD's potential to climb or the growth there. So it's not all bad news, but I would say that I'm nervous about UMD having a bye week when the team is clicking on and kind of going on all cylinders right now.
Can't disagree with that at all. And as we look at the upcoming schedule for this week, again, it's Fighting Hawks coming down to the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center this week for two very important games. Again, we talked about that at length and how important this is really for both squads. I know North Dakota is not in a position that they want to be in either. And again, it may come down to who is the more desperate team and maybe who can take that desperation and just apply that again to be who can execute their game plan. It may just come down to be that simple. It's just that simple, Max. We can sit here and talk for 35 minutes, but it all comes down to just play simple hockey. It's just pass, shoot, score, right? Arizona State will travel to Oxford to face the Redhawks this weekend. Omaha is going to be just to their west in Denver. That'll be a nice matchup for both of those squads. And then this is another curious matchup. Western Michigan going to Ed Robeson Arena to face the Colorado College Tigers, who also has had a bit of a bumpy road as of late, Max. And I'll end with this. Which of these teams in the NCHC, minus the two that we talked about today, Omaha, Denver, Western, or Colorado College, have had a more interesting pathway to where they're at right now in either conference play or overall record?
You could make an argument for any one of them, and that's probably why you phrased the question like that. The argument for Denver is they started the season as the hottest team in the country, reigning national champions. I think they went 12-0, to start the year, and then I don't want to say fell off a cliff, but they ran into some trouble. They lost guys to the World Juniors. They lost their coach, obviously, to the World Juniors, got swept by ASU when they weren't ranked at the time. Arizona State has since proven that, hey, they're a pretty good hockey team. So it doesn't look as bad now, but that was the start of some of the issues that they seem to be having. So that's the argument for them. Colorado College, they had a long dry spell in terms of getting, wins, and they're clawing their way back out of that now. But that was another team that started as, maybe an NCHC, favorite or dark horse to run it. I think they probably finished third in the voting in the conference, if I'm remembering right. But Western Michigan, like you said previously, I think that nobody expected them to finish last, but I don't think anybody expected them to be in first place in the NCHC right now, or, you know, knocking on the door of a top 5 national ranking. And they're finding a way to do it. Like you said, Alex Bump is playing extremely well. Both goaltenders, and that might be the biggest factor in Cameron Rowe and Slukinski backstopping that team there. I think either one of them would be a great Richter finalist, or you know, they're both candidates already. But I think that seeing them play and seeing them play against other people has been a treat, and something that's driving Western success. They're not scoring as many goals as maybe they were in the last 2 or 3 years, but they're not needing it. I'll say that right now. And that would be my pick for the most interesting storyline of this year, is a team that was maybe, you know, on the borderline of making it into the national tournament, to one that could be a favorite in their regional.
Yeah, for me, Western, I saw the potential, but you look at some of the teams that were coming into the season, right? Obviously, Denver was the talk of the conference because, again, winning their 10th national title. And again, just the turnover of talent that this team continues to have is just insane, right? Colorado College, again, was very highly ranked, much more in the conversation in the early parts of the season. Again, North Dakota was looked at as a team with some of their 2 first-round pick additions from the NHL draft that they would, again, reload. Western, to me, was a team that I think could do it, but now where they're at in terms of a very comfortable, right, top 10 in the pairwise, also sitting top in the NCHC. I'm not so sure that I would have seen them that high right now. Again, did not see them last. In fact, I saw them as a top half team, but I expected them more 4-3 area. And again, this is, you know, no disrespect to Western Michigan. It was just more of like the conversation with the other teams in the conference just said, there's some other competition that just might be a little bit better, right? Again, this conference is so good top to bottom. So I don't disagree. The Broncos, with the loss in Lunatics, continue to impress. They may be the NCHC's best team so far this season, and I think it'd be hard to argue that, Max. Denver, we know the one thing about them is they know how to play playoff hockey, right? So although maybe the record doesn't indicate that they've had the best time as of late, trust me, David Carl, he's won back-to-back World Juniors. He has won national titles. He knows how to, shall we say, make the adjustments for this squad when it really matters. So you can never count out Denver. So with that being said, we have ourselves shaped up a quite cool second half of the NCHC season that could spell some slides and also some rises in the rankings. We'll just have to see which team does it better. Max, any final thoughts before we say goodnight?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a little bit here. The NCHC is maybe going to be struggling to pack the national tournament at the end of the year more than they have in the last couple of years. As it stands right now, I think there's only 2, borderline maybe 3 teams in there, depending on where that cut line is and how the other tournaments shake out, versus where they've had, you know, 4, maybe even 5 in the last couple of years. And a lot of that's attributed to some of the non-conference play. Obviously, that has a big impact on the pairwise. But as far as in the conference, I mean, there's a lot to be shaken out yet. The top 3 teams are all separated by a total of 2 points, and then the next 4 spots 4 to 7. There's only 1 point separating all those ones. So none of those 2 groups are playing within it there for one another. So there's no chances for a split where they stay, you know, grouped together. So I expect this week to be the one where we start to see some of the separation within the NCHC. I don't personally love that with the UMD Bulldogs on a bye week and not having the opportunity to gain some more points. I would expect Colorado College to probably come away with maybe a point against Western Michigan and get ahead of them in the standings. But yeah, I would say that this is the weekend that we're going to see some of the changes and who the tournament teams really could be moving forward.
And that's right, because the next time that we chat here, ladies and gentlemen, it will be February, which means just about 6 weeks left of the regular season. It's coming up fast. And as we have been doing all season, we'll be here to cover it all for you guys. And that will do it here for this episode of MNCAA. My goodness gracious. For Max Veech, I'm Nick Maxson. Thank you for watching. We'll see you back next week.